I've had this drying out for about a week now. We're gonna see if it's still dead. Battery's in. It works! Clock has been reset. Set date and time. Let's whack a lens on it. Oh, that doesn't sound good. There's some rattling in there. But we're gonna take it out. We're gonna try it because it's a beautiful day. Let's go! So I'm back out again with Paul and Barry. We've come out because in a video I did a couple of videos ago on using the X-Rite to profile my camera, someone commented and someone else asked on Facebook if you can use the X-Rite ColorChecker to get rid of the color cast on long exposures with neutral density filters. So that's what we've come out today. But we figured as we've got all our flash gear with us, we're going to get one shot of Barry flying his drone that he can put on his website. And we're going to be sticking him up on there, and he's going to be there with his controller, and Paul's going to hold the light so it doesn't fall over. For people who will ask, I'm using the D7000 with a 50mm 1.4. We've got the Flashpoint R2 Pro trigger for Nikon on top, which is the Godox X Pro, and I was at 500th at f4 at ISO 100 to bring the clouds where I wanted them. But after I'd measured my ambient to get the clouds right, we brought the flash in. We were using the Flashpoint Xplor600Pro, which is the Godox AD600Pro, and the Pixapro CITI600Pro. I just kept knocking the power up and up and up until I got a good exposure on Barry, and then once we knew we were right, we fired up the Mavic Pro and flew that just into place where we wanted it, and now we've got the shot of Barry. So now we're going to go for a wander and find a scene to use these neutral density filters and the color checker, and see if we can get them looking good. So after a lot of faffing around and exploring, we decided to just come back to where we photographed Barry, but we're going to point it in a different direction. Over there we've got the color checker on the wall, we've got the trees, so we're going to set up the D7000 with the 50, and we're just going to get a regular ambient exposure shot without any filters whatsoever, and then we're going to switch over to the B&W 10 stop, adjust the exposure and get another shot. And I'm not even getting a whole lot of the scene here. I mean, it's a very sort of close, tight shot, but it's enough to kind of prove the point. So that's a 200th at f4. Now I'm going to get the 10 stop. So this is my B&W 10 stop ND, and I've had this for quite a few years now, and it's a fantastic filter. It does have a bit of vignetting on some lenses and a bit of a color cast. It's a 77mm, and I'm using a 50mm 1.4, which is a 52mm filter thread, so we're using a step-up ring to put this on here. But I do this with all my filters. I always buy 77s because like my three biggest lenses take 77mm filters and all the rest are smaller, and the step-up rings are only $1 on eBay. And let me grab my phone. So a couple of videos ago I spoke about my favorite apps for photography on Android, and one of them is Photo Pills, and this is why. So if I dial in the 200th at f4 into this, and we want to stay at f4, we're at ISO 100, and we put 10 stops on and we're staying at that. I don't know if you can see this. I've dialed f4 a 200th of a second at ISO 100. That's what we're shooting without any filters whatsoever. And we put 10 stops of ND over, and it tells us right there that our shutter speed should now be 5 seconds. So that's what I'm going to put in the camera. There's a bit of a difference on the histogram, so it's about 10 1/3 stops rather than dead on 10. So I'm just adding that extra second in to compensate, and there we go. Okay, so we will try it with the variable, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to see what the camera's meter reads, if anything at all. It's saying we're well underexposed and we're not, it just doesn't know. So what I'm going to do is eyeball it and get these pretty close to each other. We'll stop this down all the way. And this is not a good variable ND by any means. This is an Andorra. It cost me £6. I bought it from China on eBay. It took about 2 months to show up, but it's actually for video, which is what I got it for. It's been pretty impressive. For stills, the color is really, really low contrast compared to the B&W. I mean, that's very nice contrast, nice saturation. That's really, really low, oh, that's really, really low contrast, low saturation. But maybe the color checker will fix it. We'll see. Final one we're going to do is the welding glass, because this is where a lot of people start. They're cheap and easy to get hold of. And I have one. This again cost me like $1 on eBay. And it just slots straight into a coking holder. Now the one problem you have with these rather than the screw-on filters is that you can have light hitting these edges and refracting inside. So normally what I do if I'm using really thick NDs that go in filter holders like these is I'll put gaffer tape around the edges to stop light getting in. But what can also happen is, because there's a very slight gap even at the closest setting, light can enter here and then reflect off the front element, and you can actually see a reflection of the lens in the photo. So that might happen today, it might not, we're going to find out. But I'm going to pop out the ring and screw this on, slide this on there, and this is, I can't remember what system they used to rate the welding glass, but this is an 8 on that system, which is supposed to be about 10 or 11 stops. So we'll try it at the same exposure and see what happens. And this is going to be terribly green because welding glass is green, but we might have an internal reflection of the lens. And I think we've looked out, I don't think we do, but when you look at the color of this one compared to the color of the $100 B&W, there's a big difference there, a massive difference. But we'll head back to the computer now. We'll load these up and we'll see if the X-Rite software can fix the color. Right, I've been through all the images now and profiled them all up, and I have to say I was pretty surprised by some of the results. I'm not going to show you how I profiled them now because it's exactly the same process that I showed in the last video on how to profile the cameras in your phone. But let's go and have a look at the results. On top of each of these images, you can see I've overlaid the settings used to get the shot. Normally, I don't think this is all that important, but I felt at least the white balance and tint was worth looking at here. So this first one you're looking at is a completely unfiltered original shot. This is the image using the default Adobe standard color profile. And it looks pretty close, but it's not quite perfect. Once we profile with the ColorChecker Passport using the X-Rite software, we can see things shift a little. It gives a little more punch to the reds and blues, and the grass actually looks green instead of yellow. Throwing the B&W 10-stop filter over the lens, we can see a very slight shift towards magenta. This is because the B&W filter doesn't block infrared quite as much as it does with the visible light spectrum, and we see a slight colour shift even when the white balance has been corrected. Swapping over to the profiled version of the image though, we can see that it's pretty much identical to the unfiltered shot. But now let's have a look at the under a variable ND. Here you can see that there's a huge difference from the original. It looks much muddier and lower contrast using the Adobe standard color profile, and it's also very desaturated. The profiled version fixes the colour and to some degree the saturation, but it's still very low contrast. It's possible that you could get somewhat close to the original, but it's going to take a lot of time and effort to tweak it. This result actually surprised me because I've been using this filter for video for about a year now and it's worked rather well. But then for video, I've usually only got it set to about 2 or 3 stops. Here it's at full strength. And finally, we've got the welding glass. This is a common entry into the world of long exposures for many photographers. High quality ND filters can be expensive, and welding glass allows them to dip their toe in the water very inexpensively. You can see here that there is a very strong green colour cast. Not surprisingly, this is because welding glass is green. What is surprising though is what happens when we profile the image with the X-Rite software. As you can see, it actually gets worse. This is the only time I've ever seen a photo of anything where the Adobe standard colour profile has looked better than the ColorChecker. Even with the under a variable ND, both images look pretty bad, but the profile version is still an improvement over Adobe standard. With the welding glass, not so much. So what conclusions can we draw from this little experiment? Well, the ColorChecker Passport can correct for colour shifts if you're using a high quality neutral density filter. Even with pretty bad ones, it will generally improve the shot, but it does have its limits. If you have to deal with cross-polarization issues from variable NDs at a high strength setting, or extremely strong colour tints from things like welding glass, then you may not see much benefit, if any at all. So my advice is gonna be obviously invest in a decent quality ND filter, or if you're gonna go with welding glass or something really cheap, you probably want to stick to black and white. And I would also definitely suggest getting the ColorChecker Passport. But that's all for this video. I hope it helped, and if you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I'll see you next time.